Mm, 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 mm. Day 49 of 100 days, or whatever we at, 109 days or something. I don't know. We got to, I'm just going to, you can't make this stuff up. And so I'm just going to present this to you. Day 49 of 100 days. Welcome to CNN. I am your host, Kurt Kennedy. Let's go in. All right. All my subscribers out there, like and subscribe to the channel. Let's talk about this love, don't judge. Now, this is a common theme in the culture, the current, sort of the current cultural climate that we're in, is this idea that love doesn't judge, right? And so I stumbled across this on Facebook. I'm sure that this is a YouTube channel or something like that. But for me, I stumbled across this in my Facebook feed. It just popped up. And I thought, what is this? And it's a Facebook page with 7 million subscribers, subscribers. And the title of the show is called Love Don't Judge. Now, these are short episodes of, and essentially it's whatever you can think of, anything that has to do with being to love. And it usually is something that most people would disapprove of. But the title of the page is called Love Don't Judge. And so I was watching some of the videos and I came across this video entitled Christian Thruple. All right. Our three-way relationship isn't a sin. All right. So I'm not going to be able to show you this because of the way that I have the background set up. But I want you to listen to about a minute and a half of this with me, and then we're just going to talk about it. All right. So stay with me. Love Don't Judge. Here's the first minute and a half audio of the episode.
This is Katie. She fell in love with Lewis.
I was a church kid. We were both church kids.
She also fell in love with Raquel.
We instantly clicked.
Their unconventional relationship was scandalized amongst their religious community.
There's an understanding that their relationship is sinful.
We've had our share of backlash from the really conservative folk.
And even judged harshly by those closest to them.
Our families don't accept it.
But will the church ever accept their unconventional relationship?
Listen to this part.
I met Katie in 02, 03.
All right.
We clicked pretty quickly. She came
This is
to
about
my
a Christian
church,
throuple.
I am a musician, and she's a musician, and we quickly became really good friends. We got together as a couple, and we got married in 2006.
He's the only man I've ever loved, and the only man who's ever loved me. Not just loved me, but has cared for me and been so gentle and so kind with me.
And here we are, married 13 years later.
Churchgoers Katie and Lewis look like the perfect couple to the rest of their congregation.
I hope y'all can hear this.
Lewis and I didn't have sex before marriage. Lewis and I courted for 6 months? That means we only held hands before we even got to a kiss.
Despite their strict Pentecostal upbringing, a chance meeting introduced a third person into their lives.
I met Raquel at a baby shower that I was hired to go and cover as a photographer. I look around and the first person I see is Raquel, and she just has this big, beautiful smile. And I just kind of gravitated towards her.
We both felt the instant connection.
I married Katie knowing full well beforehand that, she was bisexual.
I never really explored it because out of fear of not having God on my side. He just was so open and so lovingly.
Okay, hold on. She never explored her bisexuality out of fear of not having God on her side. She gets married. These are Christians, grew up in a Pentecostal faith, right? She gets married, and then her husband decides, hey, I'm okay with you exploring your bisexuality as long as we set some boundaries, all right? So just keep listening. This is a Love Don't Judge. We're going to listen to about 30 more seconds of this, then I want to just talk about what we're hearing.
They're willing to just say, you know what, I know you never explored this side of your sexuality before, and I'd love for you to explore it. As long as we set some boundaries, I'm okay with this. I'm kind of in the notion of if it's truly meant for you, if that person's truly meant for you, they're going to be in your life.
It's not got pregnant with Lucas in 2014. Lucas was actually born on the day of me and Katie's 1-year anniversary.
Wow, Lucas, look at that kale. Ew. Not ew.
I was there at the birth with them. Me and Lewis were right beside Katie.
Lucas really just came out of nowhere.
We had not been able to get pregnant for 10 years. And it didn't happen until we get a third. You know, like, I think that, you know, if God, he has a sense of humor.
I'm not going to see him tonight. I'm going to miss you.
We became unconventional. And I think that's when I really started to just notice, and my faith journey started to just shift a bit, and my perception of who God is started to shift.
Okay. So this couple gets married. 10 years later, they meet a girl, include her into their marriage, and then they can have a baby. And then she says, my faith journey shifted and my view of God changed. Okay. Now, remember, prior to that, she didn't want to do this because she didn't want to have her God on, she thought God wouldn't be on her side. But then her view of God changed because, and adding another woman into the marriage. So now they're a Christian throuple. That's the name of the episode. It's called Christian Throuple. Our three-way relationship isn't a sin. So the whole concept of this show, Love Doesn't Judge, is ironic. So it depends on what are you defining as love and then what are you defining as judge. All right. Now, most people who target Christians that say, hey, you're not supposed to judge, they usually focus on the most popular passage in Matthew. Let's look at that real quick. All right. So Matthew 7:1-2. Judge not that you be not judged, for with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take this speck out of your eye when there is the log in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will clearly see the speck that is in your brother's eye. All right. So this passage famously by non-Christians typically, and then some Christians who I think have views that are unbiblical about sexuality and all of that. They would say that the Bible says you're not supposed to judge. Well, that's not true, because how can you exercise discernment if you don't judge, right? The point of that passage is that it's how you judge. So there was a hypocrisy that God was pointing out. He was pointing out people who judge people who also have major sin, right? So you look at Romans 2, where he's calling out the Pharisees and different people, you who say do not steal, do you steal, right? He's calling out the kind of judgment that people make and saying that you have a log in your eye. So he said, verse 5, take the log out of your eye, then you will see, the speck that is in your brother's eye, right? Then you show your brother. So there is a sense where God is saying, look, check yourself. You're not sinless. Don't march over there and tell somebody about their sinfulness and all that. So that's not true that we don't judge. It's the way that we judge, which is ironic because this is how the people who accuse us of being judgmental judge. All right. So back to this idea, the concept that love don't judge is the name of the Facebook group. 7 million. The video we're looking at now has 5.4 million views, the one we watched, this Christian throuple. So here's the problem, which is obvious to any of you who are a Christian, right? I'm not even going to deal with the perversion of sexuality in this particular clip. I'm not even going to deal with that. Let's just deal with the thought, love doesn't judge. Love don't judge, right? Now, as a believer, as someone from the Christian tradition, I believe that God is love, right? I don't know what they're defining as love, and I don't know what they're defining as judge. But there's a sense where people actually think that God is loving and doesn't judge. And so this idea, while they're not claiming it to be biblical, these Christians here are saying that their understanding of God's love expanded and so forth, and that God's not going to judge them for that. I do a lot of videos. And some of the videos that I do are on the schemes of the devil and ways that he deceives people. And I haven't really said this scheme of the devil that much, but one of the greatest schemes of the devil is to convince people that God cares more about how they feel than about what he commands. That's a scheme of the devil. Like, it's God cares more about how you feel than who his own personal character is, right? So if God, they don't even have a concept of the holiness of God, the wrath of God. They have a concept of the love of God, and the love of God, which is just approves of how they feel consistently. And I think there are Christians who think this way too, not maybe on this issue, even though there are some who profess to be Christians that think about sexuality in a way that I think is unbiblical and that will cause them eternal consequences. But this idea that love doesn't judge is so unbiblical. So I want to give you a couple of verses just to show you this. This is just typical, not even crazy theological stuff. This is just this. So 1 John 4:16 says this. So we have come to know and to believe the love that God has for us, right? God is love. So that's our starting point. And whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. Beautiful language, right? God is love. Whoever is in God, God is in them, and love abides in them. That's the connection. God is love. He defines love, right? Then it goes to 1 John 4:17. Next verse. By this is love perfected with us, so that we may have confidence for the day of judgment, because as he is, so also are we in the world. All right. So keep in mind the concept that God doesn't judge. Love doesn't judge. God is love. God's not going to judge them for how they feel. So what they believe fundamentally is God cares more about how they feel or how we feel than what he commands. So here in this verse, listen to what this verse is saying. That God is love and that love is love. And then when we abide with God, God's love is perfected with us, right? So that we may have confidence for the day of judgment. So in other words, love is going to judge. God is going to judge, and our confidence on that day, this is actually interesting because I did a video yesterday, and I do think that many Christians kind of approach the day of judgment, the day of the Lord, like Zephaniah 1 and 2. I think a lot of believers approach the day of the Lord like it's going to be like Christmas for us or something. Like, fam, that is going to be a terrible day. And I don't think it's going to be a terrible day just for unbelievers. You're going to stand face to face before God. I don't got God being all smiles. I think it's going to be a lot more firmer than we think. And so here it's saying that we may have confidence for the day of judgment because God's love is in us and we're abiding with God. That's our confidence, right? Is that God is love and but we're going to need confidence because there is a day of judgment, and God is love. So love does judge. This YouTube channel, this Facebook says love don't judge. Love does judge. Let's go to one more. Old Testament. Let's take it back. Right? Here we go. Isaiah, listen to this. When the oppressor, this is a portion of Isaiah 16:4. When the oppressor is no more and destruction has ceased, and he who tramples underfoot has vanished from the land, then a throne will be established in steadfast love, and on it will sit in faithfulness in the tent of David, one who judges and seeks justice and is swift to do righteousness. Right? So this is looking at another aversion to the day of the Lord. It says, the throne will be established in steadfast love. Steadfast means persevering, enduring love, right? So God's love perseveres with his people because we are constantly positioning ourselves to be loveless, right? It will be established in steadfast love, and the tent of David, the one who judges and seeks justice is what to do. So this reality that like God doesn't judge and love doesn't judge is a farce. And when I watch things like this Christian throuple, so a throuple, if you don't know, is a couple plus one, 3 people. When I watch things like this, I'm not self-righteously judging them and condemning them. My heart breaks for them. Really. Like, I really feel like, man, they really don't get it. And I wonder sometimes how many of us, I just think sometimes I don't get it. Like there is the day of the Lord is going to be watch my video from yesterday. I made a point about Revelation 1, about John, the Apostle John, being the disciple whom Jesus loved, who sees Jesus in Revelation 1, and he says he drops dead as though his body were dead. He can't handle the truth. He can't handle the truth. He drops, right? God has to pick him up in the spirit. We're not going to stand before God and just be chilling, sitting down in a nice chair, waiting for God to tell us how proud he is of us. We're going to see the Lord and drop. You know, it talks about, and if the righteous is barely scared, in 1 Peter 5, you got to process 1 Peter 5. Listen to this verse in 1 Peter. This verse, actually, I don't like this verse, all right? There are very few verses that I feel like I don't like. I think it's 1 Peter 4. Listen to what he says in 1 Peter 4. Here's what he says. This is what, I don't like this verse. But here's what, I'm not going to put it on the screen, I'm just going to read it. Listen to 1 Peter 4 about this, right? For it is time for judgment to begin at the household of God. And if it begins with us, what will be the outcome for those who do not obey the gospel of God? So get it. For it is time for judgment to begin where? At the household of God, on believers, not unbelievers, on believers. And if it begins with us, what will be the outcome for those who do not obey the gospel of God? And listen to this. This is 1 Peter 4:18. And if the righteous is scarcely saved, what will become of the ungodly and the sinner? If the righteous is scarcely saved, what will become of the unrighteous and sinner? You know, when we think about the end times, we got to include this verse. The righteous is scarcely saved. Scarcely. I don't know what you know what scarce means, but not a lot. Not by a large margin. Hair, chinny, chin, chin type language. Love does judge. And I think as believers who represent the God of love, we have to be careful not to fall victim to these kinds of slogans or videos. It's like, listen, love does judge, and love is going to judge. And these people who profess to believe a Christian throuple, and they're acting like that, like their view of God is changing, which ironic is God is immutable. He doesn't change. So our views of God can change, but God doesn't change. But what do I know? I'm just sitting here looking at people who are claiming to be in love and to be a Christian throuple. Brothers and sisters, don't fall for it. I was watching this testimony the other day of this pastor in Uganda who was saying that he had an encounter with the Lord, and he said the Lord said to him that in the last days, as we're in, that sexuality will be the main. I forgot when the video was. It looked kind of old, like it was some years old, had some age to it. But he said that sexuality would be the main vehicle used by the enemy to deceive people. That it would be, and if you really look at what's happened, if we're just judging America, the Christian nation, there is a sexual decadence, a sexual deviancy that is happening is sweeping the world. And even among some Christians. Now, Christians struggle with it differently. That's a different video. But there is a sexual deviant nature that is satanic, that is all over the place, and it's happening. When I see stuff like this, a Christian throuple acting as if like they're honoring the Lord and the people who disagree with them are not, Maranatha. I feel bad for these folks because my impression of God's wrath is that it's not going to be fun. But what do I know? Grace and peace. Thanks for watching. I'm back on my day in, day out. See y'all tomorrow.